Victoria Ashworth had everything. $1 billion empire at her fingertips, a picture-perfect fiancé, and a life that looked flawless from every angle. But when she forced her driver to take a deadly mountain road during the storm of the century, she had no idea that the crash waiting for her would shatter more than just metal and glass. Stranded in a freezing cabin with Elijah Banks, a mechanic she'd treated like he was invisible, Tori would discover that the man she'd dismissed as just the help was about to save her life in ways she never imagined. What she didn't know was that surviving the blizzard would be easy compared to surviving the choice she'd have to make when the rescue helicopters finally arrived. Because sometimes the person who carries you through the storm is the same person who forces you to see the truth you've been running from your entire life. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This is a story about what happens when the walls come down and you're forced to choose between the life you've built and the life you deserve. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Victoria Ashworth stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her penthouse office, 42 stories above the city, and watched the sky turn the color of old concrete. Her reflection stared back at her. Blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, cream silk blouse without a single wrinkle, diamond studs catching the light. She looked perfect. She felt like she was drowning. "Ms. Ashworth?" Her assistant's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "The attorney's office called again. They need confirmation you'll be there by 4 o'clock to sign the—" "I know what time the signing is, Marcus." Tori pressed 2 fingers to her temple. The headache had started an hour ago. "I'll be there. And Mr. St. James is here to see you." Of course he was. Tori closed her eyes for just a moment, gathering herself the way she'd learned to do since she was 16 and her father first brought her to board meetings. Show nothing, feel nothing, win everything. "Send him in." Preston St. James entered her office like he owned it, tall, angular, wearing a suit that cost more than most people made in a month. His dark hair was styled with the kind of precision that required a standing appointment at an exclusive salon. He didn't smile when he saw her. He assessed. "You're wearing that?" His eyes traveled from her face to her shoes and back again. Tori looked down at her outfit. The blouse was Valentino, the slacks were tailored, the heels were modest but elegant. "What's wrong with it?" "It's safe, boring." Preston crossed the room and kissed her cheek without warmth. "This is the biggest acquisition Ashworth Hospitality has ever made. You're going to be in photographs. The business journals will run this for weeks. You need to look like someone who belongs in those headlines." The diamond engagement ring on her left hand suddenly felt too tight. Tori twisted it absently. "I thought I was supposed to look professional." "Professional? Yes. Forgettable? No." Preston pulled out his phone, already moving on to his next thought. "I'm leaving for the resort in an hour. The helicopter's fueled and ready. You should have come with me this morning like I suggested." "I had meetings." "Meetings you could have delegated." He finally looked at her fully, and there was something cold in his gray eyes. "This deal makes your family's company a major player, Tori. It makes you a major player. Don't mess it up by being late or looking like middle management." The words stung because they were designed to. Preston knew exactly where to press to make it hurt. Tori lifted her chin. "I won't be late." "Good." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and when you get there, smile more. You always look so stressed. It ages you." Then he was gone, and Tori was alone again with the ringing phones and the gray sky pressing against her windows. She sat down at her desk and pulled up the weather report on her computer. Winter storm warnings stretched across the mountains between the city and the resort. The meteorologist was using words like significant accumulation and hazardous conditions, and avoid travel if possible. Tori closed the browser. She'd driven through bad weather before. Besides, this wasn't about what was easy. This was about a billion-dollar hotel acquisition that would cement her position in the company her grandfather had built. This was about proving she belonged at the table. This was about not giving her father another reason to look at her with that particular brand of disappointment he'd perfected over 32 years. She picked up her office phone and dialed the garage. "This is Victoria Ashworth. I need a car in 15 minutes. I'm going to the Summit Resort." "Ms. Ashworth, this is Rodriguez in dispatch." The man's voice was apologetic. "Your regular driver called in sick this morning, and with the weather, most of the fleet is grounded. We're short on... I don't care who drives me or what car I take. I need to be on the road in 15 minutes. Make it happen." There was a pause. "Yes, ma'am. I'll find someone." Tori hung up and gathered her things, the leather portfolio with the contracts, her phone, her coat. She should call her mother. She should eat something. She'd skipped lunch again. She should do a lot of things. Instead, she took the elevator down to the parking garage and tried not to think about the tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with the weather, and everything to do with the fact that she couldn't remember the last time Preston had asked her how she was. Not, "How's the deal?" or "How's the presentation?" Just, "How are you?" The elevator doors opened to the underground parking garage. The smell of oil and rubber and exhaust hit her immediately. Tori stepped out onto the concrete, her heels clicking in the vast space. A black SUV was idling near the entrance, its engine rumbling low. A man stood beside it, and Tori's first thought was that dispatch had sent the wrong person. He was built like someone who worked with his hands. Broad shoulders, strong arms, a presence that seemed to take up more space than his actual body. His skin was dark, his beard neatly trimmed, his eyes hidden behind the shadow of the fluorescent lights overhead. He wore the company's maintenance uniform, dark blue, with a name patch over his heart. Elijah. "Ms. Ashworth." His voice was deep, quiet. He opened the back door of the SUV without ceremony. Tori hesitated. "You're the driver?" "For today." He didn't elaborate. "Where's James? He's been my driver for 3 years." "Sick. Flu." Elijah gestured to the open door. "We should go if you want to beat the worst of the storm." Something about his tone irritated her. Like he was the one in charge. Like she was the one being difficult. Tori straightened her shoulders and walked past him, sliding into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather cleaner and something else. Coffee, maybe, or the faint scent of the garage itself. Elijah closed the door firmly and moved around to the driver's seat. He adjusted the mirrors, checked something on the dashboard, and pulled out of the garage without asking for directions. Of course he knew where they were going. Everyone in the company knew about the Summit deal. The silence in the car was immediate and thick. Tori pulled out her phone and tried to look busy, scrolling through emails she'd already read, checking the stock prices she'd already checked. Outside the tinted windows, the city slid past, buildings giving way to suburbs, suburbs giving way to the first hints of wilderness. "Storm's supposed to get bad around 2 o'clock. Elijah's voice broke the quiet. He was watching her in the rearview mirror. "I'm aware. Might want to consider postponing." Tori looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "The signing." He kept his eyes on the road now. "Weather Service is calling this a major event. Roads up the mountain are going to be dangerous." "I didn't ask for your opinion on my schedule." "No, ma'am." The silence came back, heavier this time. Tori felt a flash of guilt, then pushed it away. She wasn't being unreasonable. She was being professional. There was a difference. Her phone buzzed, a text from Preston. Don't be late. She didn't respond. An hour into the drive, the snow started. At first, it was almost pretty. Fat, lazy flakes drifting past the windows like something from a holiday card. But within 20 minutes, the lazy flakes became a wall of white. The highway slowed, then it stopped. Tori leaned forward. What's happening? Traffic. Elijah's hands rested easy on the wheel. He didn't seem concerned, which somehow made Tori more anxious. She tried to make a conference call, pulling up the number for the legal team handling the acquisition. The call connected, and she launched into a discussion about contract clauses and liability terms, her voice sharp and efficient. She was good at this. She'd spent her whole life learning to be good at this. In the rearview mirror, she caught Elijah's expression. He was listening, judging. She could see it in the set of his jaw. When she hung up, she snapped, "Is there a problem?" "No, ma'am. You were listening." Hard not to. He met her eyes in the mirror. "You talk loud when you're nervous." The observation landed like a slap. "I'm not nervous. I'm focused. There's a difference." "If you say so." Tori opened her mouth to fire back, but red brake lights bloomed ahead of them. The SUV slowed to a crawl, then stopped completely. A highway patrol officer appeared at the window, his jacket covered in snow. Elijah rolled down the window, letting in a blast of freezing air. "Main pass is closed," the officer said, raising his voice over the wind. "Avalanche risk. Everyone's being turned around." "Closed." Tori unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward. "For how long?" "At least 24 hours, ma'am. Maybe longer." "That's not acceptable. I have a meeting at 4 o'clock. I need to get through." The officer's expression didn't change. He'd probably heard this a dozen times already. "Nobody's getting through, ma'am. Road's closed. Head back to the city." He moved on to the next car. Elijah started to roll up the window, but Tori grabbed his seat. "Wait, there has to be another way." "There isn't. There's always another way." She pulled out her phone, hands shaking now, from cold or frustration, she wasn't sure. The map showed a thin line cutting through the mountains, parallel to the main highway. "Here, the old pass. It goes around the closure." Elijah looked at the phone, then at her. "That's a logging road. It won't be plowed." "But it's open?" "Technically." "Then take it." "Ms. Ashworth." "I'm not asking." Her voice came out, harder than she intended. "If you can't do it, I'll drive myself. But I am getting to that resort." For a long moment, Elijah just looked at her. His dark eyes were unreadable, his expression carved from stone. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He put the SUV in reverse, carefully maneuvering out of the stopped traffic. Other drivers honked, but he ignored them. Within minutes, they were off the highway, following the thin line on Tori's phone deeper into the wilderness. The logging road was exactly as bad as Elijah had suggested. Narrow, unplowed, lined with trees that seemed to lean in from both sides, their branches heavy with snow. The SUV's tires crunched over ice and frozen gravel. The windshield wipers worked frantically, but they were losing the battle against the snow. Tori's phone rang. "Preston." "Where are you?" He sounded annoyed. "On my way. There was a closure, but I found another route." "Well, hurry up. The photographers are here. The attorneys are getting impatient." "This whole thing looks bad if you're not here?" Not, "Are you safe?" Not, "Be careful." "Preston, The SUV hit something. Ice. A rut. She didn't know. The vehicle lurched sideways. Elijah's hands moved lightning fast on the wheel, correcting, compensating. The SUV steadied. "What was that?" Preston's voice crackled with static. "Nothing. I'll call you back." "Tori, don't you dare!" The signal died. The phone showed no bars. Tori stared at the screen, her heart hammering. "You okay?" Elijah's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Fine." She wasn't fine. She was terrified and trying desperately not to show it. The snow came down harder. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The world outside the SUV became a blur of white and gray and the dark silhouettes of trees. Tori gripped the door handle, her breath coming shallow. Then, through the snow, a shape appeared in front of them. Too close, too fast. Elijah shouted. Something, a warning, a curse. She didn't catch it. The SUV swerved hard. Tori was thrown against the door. The world tilted, metal screamed, glass shattered. The vehicle spun, slid, and then gravity took over. They were falling. The SUV hit something solid, bounced, hit again. Tori's head cracked against the window. Light exploded behind her eyes. Sound became muffled, distant. The airbag deployed with a sound like a gunshot, and then everything went still. Silence. Just the wind and the settling of the vehicle and the soft hiss of something mechanical dying. Tori couldn't breathe. The airbag pressed against her chest. She couldn't see, couldn't think. Then a voice, low and urgent. "Ms. Ashworth, can you hear me?" She tried to answer, but her mouth wouldn't work. Everything hurt. Everything was wrong. "I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?" Hands, strong, careful hands, moved the airbag away from her face. Air rushed into her lungs. She gasped, coughed, tasted blood. "There you go. Breathe. Just breathe." Tori's vision cleared slowly. Elijah was leaning over from the front seat, his face cut and bleeding from a gash near his temple. But his eyes were focused, present. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I don't know." She tried to move, and pain shot through her right ankle. She cried out. "Don't move!" Elijah's voice was firm, but not harsh. "Let me check." He unbuckled her seatbelt carefully, supporting her weight so she didn't fall. His hands moved over her arms, her ribs, checking for injuries with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. When he reached her ankle, she screamed. "It's bad," he said quietly. "Might be broken. We need to get you out of here." "Where?" Tori looked around, finally understanding what had happened. The SUV had gone off the road, down an embankment. They were tilted at an angle, the front end crumpled against a tree. Snow was already piling against the broken windshield. "Where are we?" "About a mile past where we should have turned around." Elijah tried his phone, then the radio. Both dead. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something like worry cross his face. "The car's done. The heater's out. We can't stay here." "What do you mean we can't stay here?" "We have to wait for help. Nobody knows we're here. The cell service is gone, and the temperature's dropping fast." He reached for his coat in the front seat. "I saw a cabin about a mile back before we crashed. Hunting shack, probably. If we can get there." "A mile? I can't walk a mile. I can barely move." Elijah looked at her for a long moment. Then he opened his door, letting in a blast of Arctic air, and came around to her side. He pulled open her door and assessed the situation. "You're not walking," he said. "I'm carrying you." Before Tori could protest, he reached in and scooped her up like she weighed nothing. She gasped, her arms instinctively going around his neck. He shouldered the door, closed, and started walking, trudging through snow that came up to his knees. The wind hit them like a physical force. Tori buried her face against Elijah's chest, feeling his heart pound with the effort of carrying her. Each step was a battle. The snow tried to drag them down. The cold tried to steal the heat from their bodies. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his coat. "This is my fault." Save your breath, Elijah said, but his voice wasn't angry. We're going to make it. Just hold on. Tori held on. She listened to his breathing, felt the strength in his arms, and understood with sudden terrible clarity that she had put them both in this situation because she'd been too proud to turn back, too afraid to disappoint, too convinced that she always knew best. Time lost meaning in the whiteout. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. Tori's ankle throbbed with every jostling step. Her hands were numb. She couldn't feel her face anymore. Just when she thought Elijah would have to put her down, when she thought they would both collapse into the snow and never get up, a dark shape appeared through the white. The cabin. Elijah kicked the door open with his boot. They tumbled inside together, and suddenly the wind stopped. The silence was shocking. Elijah set Tori down on an old cot against the wall, then immediately went back and forced the door closed against the storm. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, his back against the wood. Tori looked around. The cabin was small. One room, maybe 15 feet by 15 feet. There was a stone fireplace, a dusty table, a cupboard hanging crooked on the wall. No lights, no heat, but it had walls and a roof, and that was more than they'd had a moment ago. "We made it," she whispered. Elijah nodded slowly. He was shaking now, whether from cold or exhaustion or delayed shock. She couldn't tell. He pushed off from the door and began moving around the cabin, stuffing old rags into cracks where wind whistled through, checking the chimney, searching for anything useful. Tori watched him, this man she'd ordered around like he was furniture. This man who'd just carried her through a blizzard without hesitation. She didn't even know his last name. But she owed him her life, and they were completely, utterly alone. The cabin smelled like old wood and abandonment. Elijah worked with quiet efficiency, moving from corner to corner while Tori watched from the cot. He didn't speak, didn't look at her, just kept moving, kept checking, kept preparing. She could see the military precision in how he assessed everything. The structural integrity of the walls, the state of the fireplace, the meager supplies. Her ankle throbbed with each heartbeat. She wanted to look at it, but she was afraid of what she'd see. The pain was bad enough. Seeing the damage might make it worse. "There's wood." Elijah's voice startled her. He was crouched by the fireplace, examining a stack of logs that looked like they'd been there for years. "Dry enough to burn, and matches." He held up a small box, shaking it. The rattle of matches inside sounded like a miracle. "That's good, right?" Tori's voice came out smaller than she intended. "It's something." He began arranging the wood with practiced hands. "We need to get warm, fast. You're shaking." She hadn't noticed, but he was right. Her whole body was trembling, teeth chattering so hard her jaw ached. The adrenaline was wearing off, and in its place came the bone-deep cold that had seeped into her during the trek to the cabin. Elijah struck a match. The small flame looked impossibly bright in the dim cabin. He held it to a piece of bark he'd shredded with his pocket knife, coaxing it to catch. The bark smoldered, then flared. He added small twigs, then larger pieces, building the fire with the patience of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Within minutes, flames were dancing in the fireplace. The light transformed the cabin, pushing back the shadows, making the space feel less hostile. Heat began to radiate outward, and Tori turned her face toward it like a flower seeking sun. "Your ankle," Elijah said, standing and moving toward her. "I need to look at it." "It's fine." He gave her a look that said they both knew that was a lie. "Ms. Ashworth?" "Tori." The word came out sharper than she meant. If we're stranded in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, you can call me Tori. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or amusement. Tori, your ankle needs attention. The boot has to come off before the swelling gets worse. She knew he was right, but the thought of moving, of touching it, sent panic through her chest. Okay. Elijah knelt beside the cot. His hands were large, scarred from years of mechanical work, but when he reached for her foot, his touch was impossibly gentle. This is going to hurt. I'm sorry. He unlaced the expensive leather boot slowly, carefully, supporting her calf with one hand. Even with his care, pain shot up her leg when he eased the boot off. Tori bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry out. The boot came free. Her ankle was already swollen to twice its normal size, the skin mottled with dark bruises that were spreading even as she watched. Is it broken? She whispered. Could be a bad sprain, could be a fracture. Elijah examined it without touching the swollen area. Hard to tell without an X-ray. Either way, you're not walking on it. He stood and went outside. Tori heard him moving around. Then he returned with a handful of clean snow wrapped in a piece of cloth he'd torn from an old tarp. He placed it gently on her ankle. The cold was shocking against her skin, but within moments, the numbing effect brought relief from the constant throb of pain. Thank you, Tori said quietly. Elijah nodded and moved back to the fire, adding another log. He sat down on the floor, his back against the stone hearth, and for the first time since the crash, he let himself be still. In the firelight, Tori could see the full extent of his injuries. The cut near his temple was still bleeding sluggishly. His hands were scraped raw. There was a bruise forming along his jawline. You're hurt, she said. I'm fine. You have a cut on your head that needs... I said I'm fine. His voice was firm, but not angry. We need to conserve energy. Stay warm. Wait for the storm to pass. How long will that take? Could be hours. Could be days. The word days hung in the air between them. Tori looked around the cabin again, seeing it differently now. This wasn't just a temporary shelter. This might be home for a while. Does anyone know we're here? She asked. No. Elijah stared into the fire. Last place anyone saw us, we were on the highway. We went off-route on a logging road that probably isn't on most maps. The SUV is in a ditch covered in snow, and our phones are dead. So nobody's looking for us. Not in the right place anyway. The reality settled over Tori like another layer of cold. She was missing the biggest meeting of her career. Preston was probably furious. The board would be asking questions. And none of that mattered at all, because she was stranded in a hunting cabin with a man she'd barely spoken to before today. A man she'd treated like he was invisible. Shame burned in her chest, hotter than the fire. I'm sorry, she said. Elijah looked at her. For what? For this. For making you take the logging road. For being... She struggled to find the right word. For being the kind of person who orders people around and doesn't listen when they try to help. He studied her for a long moment. You were scared. People make bad decisions when they're scared. That's generous. It's true? He shifted, wincing slightly. You wanted to get to that meeting. I get it. It was important. Was it, though? Tori looked at the ceiling, at the old wooden beams, barely visible in the shadows. I was going to sign papers for a hotel I'll probably visit twice a year. I was going to smile for photographers and shake hands with people who don't care about me. And for that, I risked both our lives. The meeting wasn't why you needed to get there. She looked at him sharply. What do you mean? You needed to prove something. To your fiancé. To your company. Maybe to yourself. Elijah fed another piece of wood to the fire. I've driven a lot of executives. I recognize the look. Tori wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. He was right. The Summit deal was never about the hotel. It was about proving she deserved her last name. Proving she was more than just the boss's daughter. Proving she was worth the space she took up in the world. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "My late wife used to say I was too observant for my own good." He smiled slightly, but there was sadness in it. "Said I noticed things people wanted to keep hidden." "Your wife." Tori remembered the photo she'd glimpsed earlier when she'd seen his wallet on the SUV's dashboard, before everything went wrong. A beautiful woman with warm eyes and a bright smile. "What happened to her?" "Cancer, 3 years ago." The words were simple, but the pain behind them was anything but. She fought hard, fought longer than the doctors thought she would. But in the end, "I'm sorry." "Thank you." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "She's the reason I took the job at Ashworth. After she died, I needed something stable. Something to keep me busy so I didn't think too much. Fixing cars, keeping the fleet running. It was simple, clear. You break something, you fix it. If only life worked that way." Tori felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't know if it was from his story, or from her own exhaustion, or from the sheer, overwhelming weight of everything that had happened. "I'm engaged to someone I'm not sure I even like," she found herself saying. "Is that terrible?" Elijah looked at her. "Why are you marrying him?" "Because it makes sense. Our families know each other. We want the same things. We look good together in photographs." She laughed, but it sounded bitter even to her own ears. "Listen to me. I sound like I'm describing a business merger, not a marriage. That's because it is a business merger." The blunt truth of it hit her like cold water. "You're right. That's exactly what it is. Preston cares about how things look, not how they feel. And I've been going along with it because I don't know what else to do." "You could leave him." "It's not that simple." "It never is." Elijah stood slowly, stretching. "But staying with someone who doesn't see you? That's not simple either. That's just slow suffering." Tori watched him move around the cabin, checking the door, adding insulation where cold air was seeping through. He moved with such certainty, such purpose, like he always knew exactly what needed to be done next. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "Stay so calm. We're stranded in the middle of a blizzard, and you're just handling it." Elijah came back to the fire and sat down. "Panic doesn't help. Action does. So I focus on what I can control. Keeping us warm, keeping us safe, getting through the next hour. That's all anyone can do, really. Just get through the next hour." "Is that what you did? After your wife died?" "Yeah. Some hours were harder than others. Some days I didn't think I'd make it. But I did. 1 hour at a time." He looked at her fully, and his eyes were kind. "You'll make it through this too." "I don't feel very strong right now." Strength isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. You did that today. You held on when I carried you. You didn't give up. Tori felt something crack open in her chest, some wall she'd built so carefully over so many years. "I wanted to," she whispered. "When we were walking through the snow, I wanted to tell you to put me down, to save yourself. I wouldn't have." "Why not? You don't even know me." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "Because that's not who I am, and because everybody deserves to be carried when they can't walk on their own." The simple humanity of it undid her. Tears spilled down Tori's cheeks before she could stop them. She covered her face with her hands, embarrassed by the sudden breakdown, but unable to hold it back. She heard Elijah move, and then he was beside the cot, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Not demanding, not invasive, just there. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're allowed to fall apart. We're safe now. You can let it out." So she did. She cried for the fear of the crash, for the pain in her ankle, for the life she'd built that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow on the inside, for the realization that if she died today, she wasn't sure anyone would truly miss her. Not the real her, anyway. When the tears finally subsided, Tori felt empty, but somehow lighter. Elijah had moved back to his spot by the fire, giving her space, but staying close enough that she didn't feel alone. "I haven't cried like that in years," she said, her voice hoarse. "Probably needed to. My father always said crying was for people who couldn't handle pressure." "Your father sounds like someone who never learned how to be human." The observation was so accurate it made Tori laugh, a real laugh that surprised them both. "You'd like him. You both speak your mind." "I doubt we'd like each other." Elijah smiled slightly. "I don't have much patience for people who think money makes them better than everyone else." "Is that what you thought about me when you picked me up today?" He considered the question seriously. "I thought you were someone who'd forgotten how to see the people around her. Not out of cruelty, but out of habit. It's easy to stop seeing the driver, the mechanic, the janitor when you've been raised in towers." "That's not an excuse." "No, but it's an explanation." He poked at the fire with a stick. "People can change if they want to. Question is, do you want to?" Tori thought about Preston, about the board meetings, about the careful performance she'd been giving for as long as she could remember. "I don't know if I know how to be anyone else." "Sure you do. You're being yourself right now." "This doesn't count. We're in crisis mode." "Crisis doesn't make you someone different. It just strips away the pretense, shows you who you really are." Elijah looked at her. "And who you really are seems pretty decent to me." The compliment settled warm in her chest. When was the last time someone had said something kind to her without wanting something in return? When was the last time she'd let herself be vulnerable enough to receive it? "Tell me about your wife," Tori said. "If you want to." Elijah's expression softened. "Sarah. Her name was Sarah. She was a teacher, 2nd grade. She loved kids, loved watching them learn. Said every day was like seeing the world get discovered all over again through their eyes." He stared into the fire, but Tori could tell he was seeing something else. Someone else. "She made me laugh, made me think, made me want to be better than I was." "She sounds wonderful." She was. We met at a community center where I was teaching an auto repair class for people who couldn't afford mechanics. She was there running an after-school program. She saw me trying to explain how a carburetor works to a kid who could barely read and... He smiled at the memory. She helped me break it down into simple words, made it into a story the kid could understand. After class, she told me I had a gift for teaching, but needed to work on my metaphors. Love at first sight? Love at first argument, maybe. Elijah chuckled. We disagreed about everything at first, but the disagreements were fun, challenging. She made me defend my positions, think deeper. By the end of that first night, I knew I wanted to keep talking to her forever. How long were you married? 8 years, not nearly long enough. His voice caught slightly. When she got sick, she made me promise not to shut down, not to stop living. But after she died, I couldn't help it. Work was easier than feeling. Isolation was safer than connection. Is that why you work in the garage instead of teaching? Elijah nodded. Cars don't ask you how you're feeling. They don't want pieces of you that you're not ready to give. They just break, and you fix them, and that's the whole relationship. That sounds lonely? It is. He met her eyes. But it's also safe. Tori understood that better than she wanted to admit. I've been doing the same thing, haven't I? Hiding behind work? Behind Preston? Behind this idea of who I'm supposed to be. Maybe. But you're here now. Being real. That's something. Outside, the wind howled louder, rattling the cabin's walls. Snow hissed against the windows. The storm wasn't letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. Elijah stood and checked their wood supply. We've got enough to make it through the night, if we're careful. After that, he didn't finish the sentence. After that, you'll have to go out and get more, Tori said. If the storm breaks, and if it doesn't, then we ration what we have and hope for the best. He said it calmly, matter-of-factly, but Tori could hear the concern underneath. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. Me too. The honesty of it was somehow comforting. He wasn't pretending to be invincible. He was just doing what needed to be done while acknowledging the fear. That took more courage than false bravado ever could. What do we do now? Tori asked. We rest, we stay warm, we wait. Elijah settled back against the hearth. And maybe we keep talking. Helps pass the time. Keeps our minds off the cold. So they talked, as the fire crackled and the storm raged outside. Tori found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. About her childhood in boarding schools. About her mother's distance and her father's impossible expectations. About the loneliness of always having to be perfect, always having to win, never being allowed to just be. Elijah listened without judgment, asking questions that made her think, offering observations that were insightful but never condescending. He shared more about Sarah, about their life together, about the small joys that had made their marriage rich. He talked about his sister Martha, who'd tried to set him up on dates he'd always refused, about his love of old cars and the satisfaction of restoration work. Hours passed. The light outside faded from gray to black. The cabin grew colder despite the fire. Elijah found the moth-eaten tarp and draped it over Tori, tucking it around her carefully. What about you? She asked. I'm fine by the fire. You're shivering. So, are you? Tori looked at the small cot, then at Elijah, then made a decision. There's room for both of us. If we share the tarp and stay close to the fire. He hesitated. That wouldn't be appropriate. Appropriate went out the window when we crashed into a ditch. Tori shifted carefully on the cot, making space. We need to stay warm. This is survival, not impropriety. After a moment, Elijah nodded. He moved the cot closer to the fire, then lay down on the very edge, keeping as much distance as possible in the small space. Tori pulled the tarp over both of them. The warmth of another body was immediate and profound. Even with the careful distance between them, she could feel his heat, smell the faint scent of motor oil and soap that clung to his clothes. Thank you, she whispered, for saving my life today. You're welcome. His voice was low in the darkness. Thank you for trusting me to carry you. I didn't have much choice. You always have a choice. You could have fought me, made it harder, but you held on and let me help. That takes trust too. Tori thought about that as sleep began to pull at her. Trust. She'd spent so long not trusting anyone, not really, not with the parts of herself that mattered. But here, in this cabin, with this man she barely knew, she felt safer than she had in years. The last thing she was aware of before sleep claimed her was Elijah's steady breathing beside her and the crackling of the fire keeping the darkness at bay. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight they were alive. They were warm. They were together. And somehow, that was enough. Tori woke to pale morning light filtering through the cabin's dirty windows. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the pain in her ankle flared, and everything came rushing back. The crash, the trek through the snow, the fire, the conversation that had lasted deep into the night. She turned her head. Elijah was sitting by the fireplace, feeding small pieces of wood into flames that had burned low during the night. He moved quietly, trying not to wake her, but their eyes met. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning." Tori's voice came out rough. Her throat was dry, her body stiff from sleeping on the old cot. "How long have you been up?" "Couple hours. Had to keep the fire going." He stood and brought her a chipped mug filled with water. "Found this in the cupboard. Snow melt. It's clean." She took the mug gratefully, drinking deeply. The water was cold and tasted faintly of minerals, but it was the best thing she'd had in her mouth in hours. "Thank you." Through the windows, she could see that the storm was still raging. If anything, the snow was falling even harder than yesterday. The world outside was completely white. No sky, no ground, just endless swirling snow. "We're not getting out today," Elijah said, reading her thoughts. "How much wood do we have left?" "Enough for maybe 12 more hours, if we're careful." He didn't sugarcoat it. "After that, I'll need to go outside and see if I can find more." "In this weather?" "In this weather." He sat down on the floor near the cot. "But let's not worry about that yet. How's your ankle?" Tori looked down at it. The swelling had gone down slightly, but the bruising had spread, turning her entire foot and lower leg a spectacular array of purple, blue, and green. "It looks worse than it feels, which is saying something, because it feels terrible." "Can you move your toes?" She tried. They wiggled, sending sharp pains up her leg, but they moved. "Yes." "That's good. Probably not broken then. Just a bad sprain." He reached for the makeshift ice pack he'd made last night, but the snow had melted into water. "I'll get more snow for it." "Eli." She used his name deliberately, watching his reaction. "You don't have to keep taking care of me every second. You need to rest too." Something flickered across his face at the sound of his nickname. "Old habits. Sarah used to tell me the same thing, that I'd run myself into the ground trying to fix everyone else's problems. Was she right? Usually?" He smiled slightly. "She was right about most things." "Tell me more about her," Tori said, "if it doesn't hurt too much to talk about." Elijah was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. Then he began to speak, his voice low and warm with memory. Sarah believed in finding joy in small things. She'd get excited about a perfectly ripe peach or the way light came through leaves. She kept a gratitude journal, wrote down 3 things every night that made her smile that day. He paused. "After she died, I found years' worth of those journals. I was in almost every entry. Eli fixed Mrs. Chen's car for free today. Eli made me laugh until I snorted. Eli held me while I cried about the test results." Tori's chest tightened. "She loved you very much." "And I loved her. Still do, I guess. You don't stop loving someone just because they're gone." He looked at Tori. "But she wouldn't want me to stop living. That's what Martha keeps telling me. That Sarah would be angry if she knew I'd turned into a hermit who only talks to carburetors." "Your sister sounds wise." "She is. Annoying, but wise." Elijah smiled. She calls me every Sunday, sometimes twice. Makes sure I'm eating real food, not just takeout. Tries to convince me to go to church with her, to join a book club, to do anything that involves other human beings. Why don't you? Because it's easier not to. The honesty was stark. Because every time I start to connect with someone, I remember what it feels like to lose someone, and I can't go through that again. Tori understood that fear in her bones. So, you protect yourself by staying alone. What about you? Elijah turned the question back on her. Why do you stay with someone who doesn't make you happy? Because being unhappy with Preston is familiar. Safe, in a way. I know what to expect. She pulled the tarp tighter around her shoulders. Being alone would mean starting over. Admitting I made a mistake. Dealing with my father's disappointment, the board's judgment, all the whispers about how Victoria Ashworth couldn't even keep a man. You think that's what people would say? I know it is. That's how my world works. Everything is about perception, success, winning. She laughed bitterly. And here I am, losing spectacularly. Missing the biggest deal of my career. Stranded in a cabin. My fiancé probably thinks I'm dead or worse, incompetent. Does it matter what he thinks? The question stopped her. It should matter. That's not what I asked. Tori closed her eyes. No, it doesn't matter. That's the problem. Nothing about Preston matters to me anymore. Maybe it never did. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind howl and the fire crackle. The cabin felt smaller in the daylight, more fragile against the storm's fury. But it also felt warmer somehow, more sheltering. I'm hungry, Tori admitted. Elijah stood and went to the cupboard, the same one he'd searched last night. He pulled out 2 dented cans, beans and peaches, and a rusted can opener. Breakfast of champions. He worked the can opener around the beans first, his strong hands making easy work of it despite the tool's age. The smell of the beans wasn't appetizing exactly, but Tori's stomach growled anyway. Elijah heated the can by the fire, stirring occasionally with a small stick he'd whittled clean. When the beans were warm, he divided them between 2 chipped bowls he'd found and handed one to Tori, along with a bent spoon. She looked at the beans. Plain, probably expired. Nothing like the meals she usually ate in expensive restaurants. Then she took a bite. Oh my God, she said. Bad? Good. Really good. How is this good? Elijah smiled. Everything tastes better when you're actually hungry. When you need it instead of just want it. They ate in companionable silence. When the beans were gone, Elijah opened the peaches. The syrup was thick and sweet, the fruit soft, but not mushy. He gave Tori most of them. You need to eat too, she protested. I am eating. He popped a peach slice into his mouth. See? Eli. Tori. He mimicked her serious tone, but his eyes were warm. You're injured. Your body needs the calories to heal. I'm fine. She wanted to argue, but she was too hungry and the peaches were too good. A drop of syrup landed on her expensive cream coat, the one Preston had criticized yesterday. The stain spread across the fabric. Yesterday, that would have horrified her. Today, she laughed. What's funny? Elijah asked. This coat costs $3,000, and I just dripped peach juice on it, and I don't even care. She laughed harder. Preston would be appalled. $3,000 for a coat? It's designer. It's fabric. But Elijah was smiling now too. Though, it did keep you warm during the walk here, so I guess it earned some of that price tag. Everything I own is like this, expensive, impressive, completely impractical. Tori looked down at herself. Designer clothes, jewelry that cost more than most people's cars, all of it now dirty and damaged and utterly useless in this situation. I don't even like most of it. I just buy it because it's what people expect. What would you buy if nobody was expecting anything? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. I've never thought about it. Think about it now. Tori considered. Comfortable jeans, the kind that get softer the more you wear them. Flannel shirts. Good boots. Real boots, not fashion boots. A warm coat that I wouldn't be afraid to get dirty. She felt something loosen in her chest as she spoke. A garden. I'd buy myself a garden, or at least the tools to start one. You like gardening? I wanted to be a landscape architect before my father made it clear that wasn't an acceptable career for an Ashworth. She traced the rim of the bowl with her finger. I used to sneak into the hotel gardens when I was young. I'd help the groundskeeper plant flowers. He taught me about soil and seasons and how to coax things to grow. What happened? My father found out, said it wasn't appropriate for me to be playing in the dirt with the help. The old hurt was still there, buried, but not gone. I was 12. He enrolled me in business courses instead. Say T-Prep, leadership seminars, all the things that would prepare me to run the company. Did you want to run the company? Nobody ever asked me what I wanted. Tori looked at Elijah. Until now, you're the first person in 20 years to ask me that question. That's sad. It is, isn't it? She set the empty bowl aside. I've spent my whole life doing what other people expected, being who other people needed me to be, and I don't know if I even know who I am underneath all of that. You're finding out, though. Right here, right now. Elijah gestured around the cabin. No board, no fiancé, no expectations, just you. Just me. Tori tested the words. I'm not sure I like who that is. I do. The simple statement hung in the air between them. Tori felt her breath catch. The way Elijah was looking at her, not at the VP, not at the heiress, not at the polished image she presented to the world. He was seeing her. The real her, messy and scared and uncertain. You don't know me well enough to say that, she whispered. I know you well enough. He moved closer, his expression serious. I know you're strong enough to survive a car crash, brave enough to let someone carry you when you couldn't walk, honest enough to admit when you're scared, kind enough to cry for a stranger's loss. That's more than most people show in a lifetime, and you've shown it in a day. Tori felt tears threatening again. Why are you being so nice to me? Because you deserve kindness. Everyone does. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, his calloused fingers rough against her skin. And because I see you, Tori, not your last name, or your job title, or your bank account. I see you, and you're worth seeing. The moment stretched between them, fragile and precious. Tori wanted to close the distance, to lean into his touch, to see what would happen if she stopped thinking and just felt. But before she could move, Elijah's hand dropped away. I should check the fire, he said, his voice rougher than before. He stood and moved to the fireplace, putting distance between them. Tori felt the loss of his nearness like a physical thing. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping. Inside, something was building between them that felt as powerful and inevitable as the blizzard itself. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Elijah carefully rationed the wood, keeping the fire small but steady. Tori tried to help where she could, sorting through the old supplies in the cupboard, folding the tarp, anything to feel useful despite her injured ankle. By afternoon, the temperature had dropped noticeably. Even with the fire, cold air seeped through every crack in the cabin's walls. They moved the cot as close to the fireplace as possible, shared the tarp again, huddled together for warmth that was becoming less about survival and more about the simple human need for connection. "Tell me about your sister," Tori said. "Martha. What's she like?" Elijah smiled. "She's a force of nature. 5 years older than me, acts like she's my mother. She's a nurse at County General. Works the night shift, takes care of everyone, remembers everyone's birthday." His expression softened with affection. "After Sarah died, Martha showed up at my apartment every day for 2 months. Brought food, did my laundry, sat with me when I couldn't stand to be alone but couldn't stand to talk. She saved my life in a lot of ways." "She sounds wonderful." "She is. Stubborn as hell, but wonderful." He shifted slightly, his shoulder pressing against Tori's. "She's going to like you." "What makes you say that?" "Because you're honest. Martha values honesty above almost everything else. Says life's too short to waste time on pretty lies and fake smiles." Tori thought about her entire existence, built on pretty lies and fake smiles. "I think she might hate me then." "No, she'd see through the performance to the person underneath, same way I did." Elijah looked at her. "Same way you're starting to see yourself." "I'm trying. It's harder than I thought it would be." The best things usually are. They fell into comfortable silence. Tori found herself hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. His shoulder against hers, his leg alongside hers, the shared warmth beneath the tarp. It wasn't sexual exactly, though there was an undercurrent of attraction she couldn't deny. It was something deeper, more fundamental. It was intimacy. Real intimacy, the kind built on honesty and vulnerability rather than performance and expectation. "Can I ask you something?" Elijah's voice was quiet. "Anything." "What are you going to do when we get out of here?" The question she'd been avoiding. Tori took a breath. "I don't know. Everything feels different now. Like I can't go back to the way things were, even if I wanted to." "You can't step in the same river twice." "What?" "Something Sarah used to say. It's from an old philosopher. Heraclitus, I think. The idea is that you can't step in the same river twice because the river keeps flowing. It's not the same water, and you're not the same person." He glanced at her. "You've changed in the last 24 hours, Tori. The river has moved on. You can't go back even if you try." "That's terrifying." "It's also liberating. You get to choose who you become next. Nobody else, just you." Tori let that sink in. Choose who she became. When was the last time she'd made a choice based on what she wanted, rather than what was expected? "I think I need to end things with Preston," she said slowly, testing the words. "Not because of this, not because of you, but because staying with him means staying in a life that's killing me slowly. That takes courage." "I'm not feeling very courageous." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite the fear." Elijah turned to look at her fully. "And you're one of the most courageous people I've met." "I got us stranded in a blizzard because I was too proud to turn back." "You survived a car crash. Let yourself be vulnerable with a stranger. Admitted truths you've probably never said out loud. That's courage." Before Tori could respond, Elijah suddenly tensed. "Did you hear that?" "What?" He held up a hand for silence. They both listened. At first, Tori heard nothing but the wind. Then, there, a creaking sound, a groan of stressed wood. "The roof," Elijah said, standing quickly. He grabbed his coat and went to the door, forcing it open against the accumulated snow. Wind and cold blasted into the cabin. He looked up at the roof, then came back inside, his face grim. "There's too much snow. The weight is stressing the structure." He looked around the cabin, calculating. We need to clear it, or the roof could collapse. You can't go out in this storm. I don't have a choice. He was already pulling on his coat, wrapping a rag around his face to protect against the wind. Stay here, keep the fire going. I'll be back. Eli, I'll be careful, I promise. He squeezed her shoulder. But I need to do this now, before it gets worse. Then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him. Tori sat alone in the cabin, listening to the muffled sounds of Elijah working above her. She could hear him moving across the roof, the scrape of him pushing snow off the edges. Each sound was followed by the soft whump of snow hitting the ground. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The sounds stopped. Eli? Tori called out. Nothing. Her heart began to race. She tried to stand, forgetting about her ankle, and collapsed back onto the cot with a cry of pain. She couldn't get to him, couldn't help him, could only sit here and pray that he was okay. Eli! She shouted louder this time. The door burst open. Elijah stumbled inside, covered head to toe in snow. He was shaking violently, his lips blue with cold. You're okay, Tori breathed. Cold, he managed. So cold. She watched in horror as he tried to take off his coat and couldn't. His hands weren't working right. He fumbled with the zipper, his movements uncoordinated. Hypothermia. Come here. Tori pushed herself up despite the pain in her ankle. Eli, come to the fire, now! He stumbled toward her. She helped him out of his coat, his soaked shirt. His skin was ice cold to the touch, his whole body convulsing with shivers. Lie down, she ordered. By the fire, right now. He obeyed without argument, which scared her more than anything. Elijah always had an answer, always knew what to do. But now he was following her directions like a child. Tori grabbed the tarp and her own coat, draping them over him. She added more wood to the fire, building it higher than they'd been keeping it. Conservation be damned. Then she made a decision. She lay down beside him and pulled him close, wrapping her body around his, sharing her warmth. Stay with me, she whispered against his ear. You can't leave me, Eli. You said everyone deserves to be carried when they can't walk. Well, I'm carrying you now, so you have to stay with me. You have to be okay. His shivers gradually slowed. His breathing evened out. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. Tori? I'm here. The roof is clear. I don't care about the roof. I care about you. She held him tighter. Don't ever scare me like that again. He turned in her arms, so they were face to face. His dark eyes were lucid again, focused on her. I'm sorry. You saved us again. You have nothing to be sorry for. I have everything to be sorry for. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I'm falling for you, Tori, and I know I shouldn't. I know this is just the situation, the proximity, the fear. I know when we get out of here, you'll go back to your world, and I'll go back to mine, and this will just be a story we tell. But right now, in this moment, I need you to know. I see you, and I'm falling for you. Tori's breath caught. Every rational thought told her to pull back, to protect herself, to remember all the reasons this was complicated. But for once in her life, she didn't listen to the rational thoughts. She listened to her heart. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. And then she closed the distance between them and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like neither of them quite believed it was happening. Elijah's lips were still cold from his time in the storm, but they warmed quickly against hers. His hand slid from her cheek into her hair, gentle but certain. and Tori felt something inside her unlock, some final wall crumbling. When they finally pulled apart, they stayed close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. "Tori," Elijah whispered, her name a question and a statement all at once. "I know," she said. "I know all the reasons this is complicated. I know we're from different worlds. I know this might just be the fear and the situation talking, but I also know that I've never felt this seen, this safe, this real with anyone in my entire life. What happens when the storm ends? I don't know, but I know I can't go back to pretending, can't go back to Preston, to that life, to being someone I'm not." She pulled back enough to look into his eyes. "You woke me up, Eli, and I don't want to go back to sleep." He studied her face like he was memorizing it. "I don't want to lose this, lose you." "Then don't." They held each other as the fire crackled and the storm continued its assault on the cabin. Eventually, exhaustion pulled them both towards sleep. Tori's last conscious thought was that she'd never felt more at home than she did right now. Lying on a moth-eaten cot in a freezing cabin with a man she'd known for less than 2 days. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like the first right thing in years. When Tori woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Not the weak gray light of the storm, but actual sunlight, bright and sharp and unmistakable. She sat up carefully. Elijah was already awake, standing at the window, and the expression on his face was complicated. "The storm broke," he said quietly. Tori's heart sank, even as relief flooded through her. They were going to be rescued. They were going to survive. And everything was about to get infinitely more complicated. "How long do you think we have?" she asked. "Hard to say. If the rescue crews are smart, they'll send helicopters to search the logging roads. Could be hours. Could be by this afternoon." Hours. Maybe half a day left in this suspended reality where nothing existed except the two of them and the choices they were brave enough to make. Elijah turned from the window. "We should talk about what happens next." "I know what I need to do. I need to end things with Preston. I need to step back from the company, figure out who I am outside of Ashworth Hospitality." She met his eyes. "And I want to see where this goes. With you, if you want that too." "You know I do." He crossed the room and sat beside her on the cot. "But I need you to understand something. Your world and mine, they don't mix easily. There will be people who judge you for being with me. People who question your decisions, your judgment, everything. Let them." It's easy to say that here. Harder when you're facing your father, your board, the society pages. His expression was serious. "I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built. You're not taking anything from me. I'm choosing to let it go. There's a difference." Tori took his hand. "I spent 32 years building a life that looked perfect on paper. And I was miserable. You showed me what it feels like to be authentic, to be seen. I'm not giving that up. Not for anyone." Before Elijah could respond, a sound cut through the morning air, a rhythmic thumping that grew louder with each second. A helicopter. They looked at each other, 1,000 emotions passing between them in that single glance. Then Elijah stood and helped Tori to her feet, or rather, her foot. He supported her weight as they made their way to the door. The helicopter circled once, then landed in a clearing about 50 yards from the cabin. The door opened, and Preston jumped out, followed by EMTs with a stretcher. Tori felt Elijah's arm tighten around her waist, then deliberately loosen. He was pulling back, putting distance between them, reverting to his role as the driver. The help. "Don't." she said quietly. Don't do that. Tori, I mean it. Don't hide. Not now. But Preston was already storming toward them, his face red with anger and what might have been relief. Tori, my God, we've been searching for 2 days. What were you thinking taking that road? Do you have any idea? He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her fully. Dirty, bruised, wearing Elijah's coat over her ruined designer clothes. His eyes traveled to Elijah, then back to her, and something cold settled over his features. Are you hurt? Preston asked, but the concern sounded performative. My ankle. It's sprained. Maybe fractured? Tori kept her voice level. Eli took care of me. He saved my life. Preston's jaw tightened at the familiar use of Elijah's name. How fortunate. The EMTs will take over now. He snapped his fingers at the medical team. Get her on the stretcher. Carefully. I can walk with help, Tori said. You can barely stand. Stop being difficult. Preston moved as if to take her arm, but Tori stepped back, or tried to. The movement sent pain shooting through her ankle, and she stumbled. Elijah caught her instantly, his strong arm steadying her. Easy, he murmured. Get your hands off her. Preston's voice was sharp. You've done enough. He saved my life, Tori repeated, louder this time. He got you stranded in the first place. If he had refused to take that road like any sensible person would have. I ordered him to take it. He argued against it. I threatened his job. Tori pulled away from Elijah reluctantly and faced Preston. This was my fault, not his. The EMTs arrived with the stretcher. They examined Tori's ankle with practiced efficiency, asking questions about pain levels and mobility. She answered mechanically, aware of Preston pacing nearby, of Elijah standing apart now, his expression carefully blank. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Preston leaned close. We'll discuss this later, in private. Right now, you need medical attention, and I need damage control. The board is asking questions. Your father is furious, and the summit deal? I don't care about the summit deal. Preston's expression went completely cold. You're in shock. The EMTs will give you something for the pain, and you'll feel more yourself soon. They carried her toward the helicopter. Tori craned her neck, looking back at Elijah. He stood in front of the cabin, shoulders squared, watching her leave. The distance between them felt like miles instead of yards. Wait, she called out. Eli. Ms. Ashworth, we need to get you to the hospital, one of the EMTs said gently. Just wait. She tried to sit up, but straps held her in place. Preston, tell them to wait. Don't be ridiculous. You're injured. You need proper medical care, not some mechanic playing doctor in a hunting shack. Preston climbed into the helicopter beside her. He'll be picked up by the secondary team. Now let the professionals do their job. The helicopter door slid shut. Through the window, Tori watched Elijah grow smaller and smaller as they lifted into the air. He didn't wave, didn't move. Just stood there, a solitary figure against the snow, getting left behind. Like he'd always expected to be. 2 days later, Tori sat in her penthouse apartment, her leg in a cast, and felt more trapped than she had in the cabin. The ankle was fractured, not just sprained. 6 weeks in the cast, followed by physical therapy. The doctor had been impressed by Elijah's field treatment. The ice, the elevation, the immobilization. Whoever took care of you knew what they were doing, he'd said. Tori had just nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Preston had been attentive in the way a publicist was attentive to a crisis. He brought flowers, expensive arrangements that filled the penthouse with the cloying smell of lilies. He hired a private nurse. He handled the press, spinning the story of Tori's harrowing survival in a way that made her sound heroic rather than foolish. He never asked how she really was, never sat with her in silence, never just held her hand without his phone in the other, typing out emails and managing optics. Now he stood by her window, looking out at the city, and Tori watched him with the clarity that comes from truly seeing someone for the first time. "The deal closed," Preston said. "Despite your absence, despite the media circus, we managed to salvage it. Your father sends his regards and his disappointment." "Of course he does." "The board wants a statement from you, an apology for the disruption, an assurance it won't happen again." "An apology?" Tori's voice was flat. "Yes, for poor judgment, for putting yourself and company assets at risk, for—" "Where's Eli?" Preston turned from the window. "I'm sorry?" "Elijah Banks, the man who drove me. Where is he?" "How should I know? You were handling everything, the rescue, the aftermath. What happened to him?" Preston's expression tightened. "He was picked up by the ranger team and returned to the city. Beyond that, I didn't inquire." "Why would I?" Tori reached for her phone on the side table. "I need his contact information." "Why on earth would you need that?" "Because I want to thank him properly." "You can send a card through HR, or a bonus, whatever's appropriate for the help." Preston crossed his arms. "Tori, you're not thinking clearly. You went through a trauma. It's natural to feel gratitude, even attachment, to the person who was there. But that doesn't mean—" "Stop!" Tori held up her hand. "Just stop talking." Preston's eyes widened. In all their years together, she'd never interrupted him, never told him to stop. "Excuse me?" "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." She took a breath. "I'm ending our engagement." The silence that followed was profound. Preston stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "You're what?" "I'm ending our engagement. I don't love you, Preston. I'm not sure I ever did. And you don't love me. You love what I represent. The connections, the prestige, the photo opportunities." She twisted the engagement ring off her finger. The movement hurt her still healing bruises, but she didn't care. She held it out to him. "I'm done pretending this is something it's not." Preston didn't take the ring. He laughed instead, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "This is about him, the mechanic." "My God, Tori, did you actually develop feelings for the driver? How pathetically predictable." "This isn't about Eli. This is about me. About choosing a life that's honest, instead of one that just looks good." She set the ring on the coffee table. "I've spent my entire life doing what other people expected, being who other people needed me to be. I'm done." "You're making a mistake." Preston's voice went cold. "Do you have any idea what this will do to your reputation? To your position at the company? Your father will—" "My father will be disappointed. He's always disappointed. At least this time, I'll have earned it by choosing myself, instead of by failing to be perfect enough for him." Tori met Preston's eyes steadily. "I'm stepping back from the VP position. I'm going to take some time to figure out who I actually am and what I actually want." "This is insane. You're throwing away everything for some fantasy you built in a cabin while you were in shock?" "Maybe. Or maybe being in that cabin was the first time I was clear-headed enough to see the truth." She reached for her crutches. "I need you to leave now." "Tori—" "Please leave, Preston. We're done here." For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Then his expression shifted into something ugly. Wounded pride wrapped in contempt. "Fine. Throw your life away for a man who changes oil for a living. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've lost." I won't. Preston grabbed his coat and left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Tori sat in the sudden silence, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She'd done it. Actually done it. And she felt terrified and exhilarated and more herself than she had in years. She picked up her phone and called HR. The address led Tori to a modest neighborhood on the east side of the city. Small houses with tidy yards, cars in driveways that were built for function rather than status. The rideshare driver helped her out of the car, and she stood on the sidewalk, leaning on her crutches, looking at a pale blue house with white trim and a porch that wrapped around the front. Smoke rose from the chimney. A vegetable garden, dormant for winter, occupied one side of the yard. Tori took a breath and made her way up the walkway. Each step was an effort with the crutches in the cast, but she pushed forward. When she reached the porch, she knocked. The door opened. A woman stood there, early 60s, warm brown skin, graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, eyes that missed nothing. She looked Tori up and down with an expression that was equal parts protective and assessing. "Martha," Tori said. It wasn't a question. "And you're the hotel heiress." Martha didn't move from the doorway. "Tori Ashworth." "Yes, ma'am. My brother told me about you." "Is he here? I need to talk to him." Martha crossed her arms. "He's been packing for the last 2 days. Says he's leaving town. Won't tell me where, just that he needs to start over somewhere else." Tori's heart sank. "Because of me? Because he thinks there's no place for him in your world? And because he's afraid if he stays, he'll spend his whole life wanting something he can't have?" Martha's expression softened slightly. "Are you here to prove him right or prove him wrong?" "I'm here to tell him that I love him." The words came out before Tori had consciously decided to say them, but they felt true. Completely, utterly true. "I'm here to tell him that I ended my engagement, that I'm stepping back from my company, that I don't care about our different worlds because I want to build a new world, one where we can be together. If that's what he wants too." Martha studied her for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "He's in the living room, boxing up his books." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. If you hurt my brother, I'll make sure you regret it. I don't care how much money you have." "I won't hurt him, not if I can help it." "Good." Martha gestured toward the hallway. "Go on." Tori made her way through the house. It was everything her penthouse wasn't. Warm, lived in, full of photographs and mismatched furniture and the smell of something baking. She heard movement in the living room and paused in the doorway. Elijah was kneeling beside a cardboard box, placing books inside with careful precision. He wore jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, and his movements were methodical, almost meditative. He didn't look up. "Martha, I told you, I'm fine. I don't need—" He glanced up and froze. "Tori." "Hi." She leaned heavily on her crutches, suddenly uncertain. "Can I come in?" Elijah stood slowly, his expression guarded. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you, to talk to you." She moved into the room, each step deliberate. "Martha said you're leaving. I think it's for the best." "Best for who?" "For both of us. You need to get back to your life, and I need to—" He gestured vaguely. "I need to not be the mechanic who fell for a woman so far out of his league he can't even see the playing field." "You're not out of my league. If anything, I'm out of yours." Tori reached the couch and sat down gratefully, setting her crutches aside. "I ended things with Preston." Elijah's eyes widened. "What?" "2 hours after the rescue, I gave him back the ring. I told him I was done, pretending to be someone I'm not." She met his gaze. "And I told my father I'm stepping back from the VP position. I need time to figure out who I am outside of Ashworth Hospitality, outside of all the expectations and the performance. Tori, you can't throw away your career because of what happened in that cabin. I'm not throwing it away. I'm choosing something different, something real. She leaned forward. Eli, I've spent my whole life being afraid. Afraid to disappoint people. Afraid to fail. Afraid to want something that didn't fit the plan everyone made for me. And then I spent 2 days in a cabin with you, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Or I was, but I was more afraid of going back to that half-life than I was of anything else. What are you saying? I'm saying, I love you. The words hung in the air between them. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons this shouldn't work. But I also know that I've never felt as alive as I did when I was with you. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Elijah stood very still, his expression unreadable. You love me. Yes. You ended your engagement, stepped back from your job, changed your whole life. Yes. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've known for 3 days. Tori felt her heart drop. I'm not asking you to carry me again. I'm not asking you to save me or fix me or complete me. I'm just asking for a chance to date properly, to see where this goes without the storm and the fear and the desperation. Elijah walked to the window, his back to her. The silence stretched until Tori thought she might break from it. Then he spoke, his voice low. Do you remember what I said in the cabin? About how every time I start to connect with someone, I remember what it feels like to lose someone? Yes. I've been using that as an excuse to stay safe, to not risk anything. But you're right. That's not living. That's just existing. He turned to face her. Sarah would be so angry if she knew I'd been hiding for 3 years. She'd tell me to take the risk, to be brave enough to love again. And what do you want? I want to be brave enough. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. I love you, Tori. I've been trying to talk myself out of it for 2 days, telling myself it was just the situation, just the proximity. But it's not. It's you, your courage, your honesty, the way you let yourself be vulnerable even when it scared you. I love you, and I want to see where this goes. Tori felt tears stream down her face. Really? Really? But I need you to understand, I can't be your rebellion, can't be the thing you use to prove a point to your father or to yourself. If we do this, it has to be real. It is real, the realest thing in my life. She cupped his face in her hands. I'm not looking for a rebellion. I'm looking for a partner. Someone who sees me and challenges me and makes me want to be better. Someone I can build a life with, not a performance. Elijah smiled, that warm, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Then I guess we're doing this. I guess we are. He leaned forward and kissed her, and Tori felt like she was coming home. Not to a place, but to a person, to herself. When they pulled apart, Martha was standing in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. So, I'm guessing you're not leaving town after all? No, ma'am. Elijah stood, keeping one hand linked with Tori's. I'm staying right here. Good, because I was not looking forward to packing all these books. Martha came into the room and sat in the armchair, looking between them. Now, let's talk about how this is actually going to work. Because love is beautiful, but logistics are practical. And so they talked. About Tori's plans to start her own landscape design business. About Elijah's dream of opening a classic car restoration shop. About the challenges they'd face. From Tori's family, from society, from their own fears and habits. But through it all, they held hands. And they listened to each other. And they began to build something new. 3 months later, Tori sat on a bench in the park, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her cast was gone, though her ankle was still a little stiff. She wore comfortable jeans and a flannel shirt she'd bought at a thrift store. No designer labels, no performance. Elijah sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. They'd just come from looking at a property, a small building that could house both her landscape design studio and his restoration shop. It was perfect, affordable, theirs. "Your father called again?" Tori said. "What did he say this time?" "The usual. That I'm throwing my life away, that I'm embarrassing the family, that I'll come crawling back when I run out of money." She leaned into Elijah. "I told him I don't need his money or his approval. I just need to be happy." "How did he take that?" "About as well as expected. He hung up on me." She smiled. "But my mother called later, separately. She said she was proud of me for choosing my own path. It was the first real conversation we've had in years." "That's good." "It is." Tori looked up at him. "What about Martha? Is she still grilling me about my intentions?" "She'll stop grilling you when we've been together for about 20 years. Maybe." Elijah grinned. "But she likes you. She told me you have good instincts and a strong spine. High praise from Martha." They sat in comfortable silence, watching people walk by. Couples, families, individuals all moving through their own lives. 6 months ago, Tori would have felt separate from all of them, above them, isolated in her tower. Now she felt connected, part of the flow of life rather than separate from it. "I'm happy," she said softly. "Is that allowed? To just be happy?" "It's required." Elijah kissed the top of her head. "You've earned it." "So have you." They watched the sun sink lower, painting the world in gold. Tori thought about the cabin, about the storm, about the moment when her carefully constructed life had crashed along with that SUV. She'd been so afraid then, afraid of losing control, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of being seen. Now she understood that being seen wasn't something to fear. It was something to treasure. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For carrying me when I couldn't walk. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For being brave enough to love me." "Thank you for being brave enough to love me back." Elijah pulled her closer. "For trusting me enough to hold on." Tori smiled, resting her head on his shoulder as the last of the daylight faded and the first stars appeared overhead. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, from her family, from society, from the simple difficulty of building a life from scratch. But they would face it together. Not as savior and saved, not as rich and poor, not as any of the labels the world wanted to put on them. Just as Eli and Tori, two people who'd found each other in the middle of a storm and chosen to keep holding on long after the weather cleared. And that, she thought, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The end.